Okay, I think it's 6:35 and we can start. So, hello everyone. My name is Lena Papalexopoulou. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a member of the CAA board in New York and president of the local chapter, CAA Greece. I would like to welcome all of you here. It's wonderful to have such good attendance and also to see people joining us from London and Ankara and New York, not just from Athens and Crete, of course. So I'm delighted that you were all able to join. I'm also delighted that Paul Lindbergh from New York is able to join us, and I would like to thank him specifically for hosting us today. So a few weeks ago, Paul sent us the demographic analysis for our club, and the number of alumna and alumni were not a surprise. We're 602 within Greece. But what did surprise us a little bit was the breakdown by school. And there we saw that the number 2 school in terms of numerical importance was the School of Architecture, specifically the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. There are more than 100 members in our club that have graduated from that school. So that's why our board decided to hold an event that would be of interest to those people, and specifically, for architecture. So we were fortunate enough to have 2 members of our board, Anna Karayani and Electra Kodoroupi, who are graduates of GSAP. Anna graduated in 2010 from GSAP, and she got her PhD from the Technical University of Crete, where she's currently an assistant professor of architectural design. She's also the co-founder and design director of ANT Architects. Electra Kodoroupi graduated in 2012, and she's a partner at Energy and Design LP. So they came up with the idea of finding and showcasing women architects in Greece who are graduates of Columbia and who have won awards in different works that they have done. So without any further ado, I would like to pass the baton to Anna and to Electra to thank our guest speakers and to get the show started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you all for being here. We have 4 wonderful presenters, Stella Daouti, Evita Fanou, Agapi Proimou, and Parina Vasilopoulou.
And Evita Fanou presents with Ariadne Bozani together.
And, of course, thank you for noted, who will be presenting their award-winning projects tonight. So our first presenter is Stella Stelliani, let's say Daouti. Stelliani studied architecture at the Paris Belleville Architectural School in France and worked for several firms in Paris before receiving her MSc AAD in 2005 at Columbia University, New York. In 2006, she established Area Architecture Research Athens, together with Yorgos Mitroulias and Michael John Raftopoulos. Their work has received numerous distinctions and awards, such as first, 2 nominations for the European Miss Van der Rohe Award and the award for Best Work of the Greek Architecture Awards. Stelliani has also taught architectural design at the Department of Architecture at University of Patras, and tonight she will present their award-winning project, Salamis House. Thank you. Stella, the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back and be part of a Columbia alumni event. It's been a while. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to share my screen in order to... Can I do that? Yes. Okay, I think I can now. Oops. Okay, here we are. Is it good now? Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So today we're going to present a very small project. It's a small house that we recently completed, and it's a very dear project to the office. It was designed together with Michael John Raftopoulos and Yorgos Mitroulias. Yorgos Mitroulias is also a Columbia alumni from 2004. Salamis, many of you are aware of it, but it's a very interesting place. It's a small island really close to Athens, but at the same time, it's not a touristic destination. On the opposite, it's very well known for its maritime past, for its industrial zone, for its naval base, the military naval base. And all these characteristics really shielded it from becoming a touristic destination like other small islands that one can find in the area close to Athens, such as Aegina or Spetses, let's say. So for starters, this was an interesting place for us architects when we were asked to design a very small summer and weekend house for two clients. So here you can see an image of Perama, which is across the Salamis Island. And you can see a bit the character of this area. So Salamis was inhabited firstly by citizens of Perama who were working in the shipyards and in the industrial zone, and who could easily buy small plots of land in Salamis in order to make small summer and weekend houses. And the way it was done, it was very informal. So there is no an official design in the island. Everything was made through an additive process and ad hoc additions made by the inhabitants. And here you can see a bit the character of the neighborhood that the plot is situated. Here is our plot. And the general character is an olive grove, basically, that has small plots of land that were inhabited through that very informal process. So that was another interesting part of the project. Looking closer to the neighborhood, you can see how the streets are narrow, they don't have pavements, they're very rudimentary in terms of infrastructure. And here are some of our neighbors, which were also very interesting, is those makeshift constructions made with light materials that and those additions were made by the inhabitants in order to respond to the needs of the family that were changing through time, but also in order to respond to the Mediterranean climate and incorporate as much as exterior space as possible into the everyday life. That was a part concerning context that really interested us. Another part that was of interest in this project was the way it was designed. It was a very open-ended process of design. The owners, who are a middle-aged woman with her son, did not have a very specific list of needs, as many clients usually do. So we started with creating a number of very different schemes, very different from one another, even controversial sometimes. And it was a process where everything was discussed with the clients thoroughly, and they were participating from day one in that process. And the end design actually came through these discussions by working on some ideas that interested us even more, or abandoning some. But in the end, the actual project, I think that it combined a number of interesting characteristics that were found in many different ideas, such as the diverse house or the solid house or this house with the courtyards. All these different ideas, I think that were well represented in the final project. 3D models, physical models were actually a very good tool for presenting our ideas and communicating our ideas with the clients. And this is the final model of the project. Here one can see that the project is quite solid, it's very introverted as an architectural representation. And it is organized around different courtyards. The main courtyard is in the middle of the house. Here one can see the actual house and how it is after completion and how it sits in the original olive grove, surrounded by those more informal constructions. And for us, it was interesting because comparing it to the existing surrounding houses that had this concept of addition, in our case, it was a bit the opposite. We started with a very solid volume, and we started subtracting from it in order to create courtyards that the house would look into, and mainly this central courtyard, which hosts an olive tree, which was one of the main characteristics of the site. And also here there is another courtyard that hosts a well, and that was another characteristic of the site, which otherwise did not have any external reference points. So these two courtyards actually anchor the different spaces of the house. In the central courtyard, one can find a first small courtyard that serves as an entrance court. And then you have two smaller glass volumes, some lightweight constructions as well, that host the main spaces of the house, the living room and the kitchen and dining room. The olive tree courtyard is the second courtyard of this big light square that leads to the back of the house where you have a small swimming pool. In those diagrams, one can see that the enclosed parts of the house have full height sliding doors that can open or close in different ways. And they create an interior that is very flexible. One can have an interior that gives more to the entrance area, or one can have an interior that is completely enclosed, or one can slice the house in two and have one part of the house open to the front and one part of the house open to the back. This is a very flexible and open space that creates different relations between exterior and interior space. So here you can see again this central square space, and in comparison to the lightweight construction that one can find in our neighbor's house that sits on top of the main house. In our case, the lightweight construction sits inside in the center of the house. And one can, here's the entrance of the house. It's very austere, very monumental. But once we enter inside, this is the central courtyard with the two main spaces that actually can host a number of domestic rituals that one can imagine during a weekend or a summer in this house. I think that in terms of materiality, there were also a lot of influences coming from the island. We decided to use the primer red paint that comes from the maritime history of the island. Again, some images where by sliding the doors, having them completely open or completely closed and closed, one can have a very different sense and use of this central space. And then one can see on the sides, we have encaved the more private spaces of the house that are actually a bit more private, let's say. So also this central space works again as a collective space. It's the house itself becomes a small village where the two more private spaces are found together in this central collective space. And the two doors that lead to the back and the front of the house, again, these are 4-meter metal doors that have a rust finish. Again, it was the influence from the small ferries that bring you to the island and the doors that are opening and closing upon arrival. The well courtyard, entering at the more private spaces where you have a different feel, more lighter materials. And on the top of the house, a small terrace where one can see the olive grove. And one might feel being on the ferry coming to Salamis Island. And again, this reference to the ferry boats, as someone is leaving the city in order to arrive to the island, again, we imagine that this door closes behind you and you live your everyday life and you become submersed into this more tranquil space that the house offers. And I think that's it. I don't know how was regarding time. I know we only had 10 minutes, so I'm not sure.
No, that was great. Thank you, Stella. Great project and great presentation as well. We're going to have questions at the end of all presentations.
Yes.
So I'm going to proceed now to the next team. And we're going to change completely scale. From a small residence, we're going to move to the urban scale of a city square. Because Evita Fanou and Ariadne are going to present the new design of Aristotle Square in Thessaloniki, a competition they recently won. And I want to present the two designers. Evita Fanou is an architect and researcher. She's currently a PhD candidate at the National Technical University of Athens as a scholar of Bailike and Onassis Foundation. She holds a Master's of Science in AAD from Columbia GSAP and a professional degree in architecture from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. She has taught design studies at Parsons, the New School of Design, and SIGTech in New York, and she has taken part in several architectural competitions with 8 awards and distinctions. Her work has been widely published in national and international press. Ariadne Pozani is a professor at the School of Architecture at the National Technical University of Athens, teaching design and theory. She holds a PhD from the Architectural Association in London, a Master of Architecture from Bartlett, UCL, and a professional degree from NTUA. She has worked as an architect and a stage designer since 1998 and has won 13 awards and distinctions in architectural competitions. Since 2018, she's the editorial director of the Greek architectural magazine EK, where she often organizes architectural events and conferences.
Thank you so much.
So we are ready to listen to your project.
Let me share my screen. I'm going to share the desktop, actually, PowerPoint desktop. Share. So yes, we're going to move to a completely different scale. And thank you, Stella, for a great first presentation. You're breaking the ice for us. So we're here. We're going to thank Electra, first of all, for the nice introduction. And we would like also to thank the Columbia Alumni Association in Greece for inviting us to present our work. We're going to be presenting our proposal for the redesign of Aristotle Square and Axis in Thessaloniki, Greece, which is actually a one-stage international architectural competition that we won last August. And whoever is not very familiar with Thessaloniki is the second biggest city in Greece. It's in the north of Greece and one of the biggest cities in the Balkan area, and was massively destroyed after a big fire in 1917. It destroyed most of the city center as we know it today. So 2 years later, Ernest De Bruyne, sorry, it doesn't move, yes. 2 years later, Ernest De Bruyne, a French urban planner and architect, was asked to redesign the city. So he did so with European standards. He did big esplanades and big axonic roads that lead to the city, framing the views of the sea and Olympus Mountain across the Gulf. And this is a zoom in his plan from the 1919. This is Aristotelus axis, if you can see my mouse. I'm showing it here. And our intervention area, according to the competition brief, is actually starting from the middle of the axis to the sea, including a square by Egnatia Avenue, the part of the axis of Aristotelus, and this uniquely shaped Aristotelus Square as we know it today. And here is a sketch of Ernest De Bruyne of how he imagined Aristotle Square to be like, with Aristotle, a statue of Aristotle himself in the middle of the square. And as you can see, there is a specific design also for the elevations of the buildings. So this was a big part of the design of the area. He didn't stay in the plan, but he also designed the elevations with one of the most specific characteristics being this covered stoa with commercial use on the ground floor. And of course, this very unique architecture that it's creating an unifies the public space, let's say, in our area. And we can actually see a little bit more here with some renovation and reconstruction that happened on those buildings 2 decades ago, 1995. Here we can see also the original colors and all these details. And actually, this, as we understand, this plan of Ernest De Bruyne didn't happen in one night. It took several years to be built. So you can see here in one picture from Aristotle Square from the 50s, a lot of buildings that form now Aristotle Square are not yet built. And if we know a little bit, if we go a little bit later in the 60s, we see that Aristotelus axis is not for pedestrians yet. It's an actual road with cars, and it has a middle green area that it makes difficult for people to cross from the one to the other.
During the course of its history, I think in recent years, two dates we should maybe remember, because they somehow define the city as we know it today. The one is 1997, when Thessaloniki was the cultural capital of Europe, and then part of the axis was pedestrianized. And also it was the year that it was announced an international architectural competition for Aristotle's axis and square. And the first prize never realized, partly because of the extended excavation there were proposed. And then a lot of years after that, last year, 2021, there was the new international architectural competition for Aristotle axis and square, but in a part of the former area of 1997. Evita?
Yes, sorry.
Well, for us, it was very, very provocative in a way to participate in this competition. First of all, we noticed that it was a very well organized competition. The brief was quite explicit, and it was somehow putting the area among the different parts of the city and the different works that were planning to be done in the next years. And here you see the first time you see, you know, the area with the red line, and there is first of all this square, which is adjacent to Egnatia Street, and the axis, and then the bigger Aristotle Square, which is, you know, in front of the sea. Now, in this image, you can see also all the different kind of monuments and important landmarks of the city, how close they are to our area. And here is a view, an aerial view of how it is today, more or less. We are north here, the Egnatia Square, and facing towards the Aristotle Square and the sea. And you can see maybe something quite, you know, important, that the main axis, as extended parts also of the pavement, are green areas. So they are not kind of dedicated to circulation. Next.
Here we have Aristotle Square as it is right now.
And here I think this image shows something quite important for us. It shows this this orange buildings, monuments, landmarks, that it's very easy to understand that they belong to another urban fabric, not the orthogonal urban fabric of today of Ernest De Bruyne, but in the former tissue of the city, the one that we already explained. It was the one destroyed from the fire of 1917. Now, we thought that there is a kind of a memory of the recent history of the city, because of course, you may know that Thessaloniki has a long history, a Byzantine and Roman history, but this recent history of the city was completely erased in a way.
Yes, and it's exactly this map that brought us to our first ideas about the competition. These orange buildings that were kind of like off the grid of Ernest De Bruyne, it was a question mark for us. So, I mean, when I say we, I have first make a parenthesis and say that we're a team of 5 people. It's not only me and Ariadne. We also collaborated with 2 more architects, Gregory Voutoufianakis Petropoulos and Doret Panagiotopoulou, and an architectural student, George Rechos. So, starting from this map that we found in the competition brief, we started putting some questions together, and we were wondering of where do these monuments actually, because these orange buildings were actually monuments of the city, where do they belong? We found a map of the city in our area, of the city before the 1917 fire, and we actually discovered that these monuments actually belong to this old grid that is underneath the new Ernest De Bruyne very axonic system. This old city, we thought that is a memory that needs kind of like to be explored again, be highlighted selectively, because these monuments belong in this grid, and this grid was giving directions to this monument. So we selectively bring back some threads of that memory of the city that exists. And you can see later how, as we explore and we show our proposal, how these threads are actually coming to life. This is, you get a glimpse here of how these threads are activated also in the nighttime. They become light fixtures on the floor of our proposal. And this is the plan, the actual general plan of our intervention. It starts on Egnatia Avenue with a small grove of palm trees and a small threshold between the north of the axis and the south of the axis we're asked to design. We create a linear wide alea in the middle of the axis for people to walk, with trees on both sides, and then we end up on Aristotle Square, creating a central point with different materiality that we actually extend towards the sea, and with some steps that you will see also later, people can sit there and enjoy the view of the sea, Polemic Mountain, and the sunset. In order to understand better this drawing, it's important to actually see all the different layers that bring this drawing together. We start with that bottom layer, and this axis and the whole proposal is actually organized in parallel zone of circulation, with the middle being the central zone of circulation, the slow movement, as we say it. And the two different squares, they were treated completely different. They have a completely different significance within the city, but they both work as thresholds to connect our proposal with the north and the south, respectively. The layer on top brings these selective memory threads from the past to that new floor we're introducing. We have another layer of seating typologies organized around the parallel zones that are holding all the proposal together. An important element about public space and how this performs during time is the water. So we're bringing elements of water from the sea towards the proposal to the north, and in different kind of typologies that we categorize in different urban equipment with water. And last but not least, the plantation trees and greenery that is also creating shadows across the proposal, and some canopies that were conditioned from the competition to organize the outdoor space of the cafeteria. You can see a small axonometric here, but you could see more of it later. This is a zoom in into the axis, especially in order to understand of how these parallel zones are working. As I said before, the middle wide zone is a slow movement, is a circulation for slow movement, and has unobstructed views to the north of the city and also the south on the sea. So you can walk there in a very slow rhythm. We have two zones on each side that organizes the sitting typologies, and we have different kind of sitting equipment and trees, like our evergreen and deciduous trees. We have here on both sides bike lanes, so it's our fast circulation, and we have also the covered stoas that it has commercial uses. So we have this kind of in and out the store. And that's how we organize in this direction all the circulation without, of course, leaving, without allowing for circulation also coming from across, from zone to zone. Another big aspect of our intervention and proposal was the materiality of it. So what we decided to do is actually borrow the color palette from the Ernest De Bruyne listed buildings and translate that to materials that are earthy, like natural Greek materials, stone and marble, and different things that will actually unify the public space and make the proposal part of the existing context that is actually the buildings of Ernest De Bruyne. And that's a view of how this could look like when all these things kind of come together, the zoning, the diagrams, and the actual life on the axis.
Now, even though I think from the beginning of the competition, the decision that was made was to have a kind of a mild proposal that has a continuity from the one side, from the one square to the last one, to the Aristotle Square. We strongly believe that just underlying specific elements every time in the different parts of this axis, but also giving a specific identity, character, atmosphere in the two squares was something that we had to achieve. So we call these parts of the proposal kind of rooms, even though they're not exactly what we would call in Renaissance a room, an urban room. There are 5 of them. The first one is the palm tree room, as we call it, and it is the square adjacent to Egnatia. The second one, we call it the water room and the open market room, because there is a kind of more strongly the element of the water, but also a subconstructure for an ephemeral market, you will see later. The third was the Manoliuchi Room. So the plantation here, a specific tree gives a kind of a specific atmosphere that we would like to introduce. Adjacent to that is the room of time and the sculpture garden. The room of time because there is a listed clock that we redesigned. And then it is the Aristotle's threshold and the square that we call the mirror of the city, metaphorically, but also literally, as you will see later. Now, the first one, you can see this palm tree room and the water room, the plan, Evita. These drawings were made for the competition as a separate part that we had to submit. Here I think you start to recognize all the rules of the design. One can very easily discern that every element of the proposal belongs to the orthogonal grid of the city, but then some traces, selected traces, as Evita said, are somehow highlighted kind as a hint of the old urban farm fabric. We strongly believe that this square had to have a kind of natural canopy, and the palm tree somehow offers this kind of a canopy, but with long, very long trunks that for us it was a kind of a colonnade. And I think that was very important because from the beginning also of this promenade, you constantly had to have the view of the sea at the end, but also to be able to see the surrounding buildings. This is a very, very specific and rare for Greek cities environment because we don't really used to have such a continuity of facades. There are not all of them very important buildings or facades architecturally, but they offer this kind of continuity that it is a very strong urban element. And adjusting to that, it was this part that can host an ephemeral market, as the proposed grid includes infrastructure for an ephemeral market. A unit of light canopy is introduced, creating different open market typologies according to the unit combinations. And of course, this unit shades or eliminates different actions. Then we have the Manoliuchi Room and the Room of Time. You can see the plan.
Here we have the Manoliuchi Room, and this is the Room of Time with a listed clock.
And you see for this specific part of the proposal, we also introduced a kind of a specific seating element that includes the magnolia trees. And this part, the Room of Time and of Ephemeral Garden of Sculptures, we introduced also this area. You can see a slightly different color of the pavement that somehow shows the area that the Mary could have an ephemeral exhibition of sculptures by time to time. We used Chilida sculptures, but we will see what it becomes.
We'll see about that.
And here is the sitting kind of clock. The surface is has a kind of surface of water. It's not easily to see maybe from this image. And finally, we conclude to this Aristotle Square threshold, a very important kind of, as you say, semi-round shape that we had to work in order to introduce the peripatiti, the walker.
The walker to the actual
to the kind of a grande finale, we could say.
The threshold is something like the in-between space that connects the dots of the walker. This is the plan that we submitted for that part. You can actually see that there is a small recessed, only 3 steps area in order to create a central area of stop and see. And we extended that materiality into the sea. And that's a view between the threshold and Aristotle Square. We can see also kind of the canopies and how these have a relationship with the buildings. And these few steps create this seating area on the north of Aristotle Square only. In this section perspective, with the Olympus mountain indicated when we have a clean atmosphere in Thessaloniki, we see how the buildings and the covered stoas have a relationship with the canopy, the recessed Aristotle Square, and the other side the same thing. And that's our view of how we imagine Aristotle Square to be in the future. The canopy is a structure that was also a condition of the competition. We had to design a canopy structure that will accommodate the outdoor space of the cafeteria and also control a bit how wide this outdoor space will be. So what we did is we created a structure that has an open dialogue with the elevations of Ernest De Bruyne. The column line is following the column line of the covered stoas. The 3 parts of the canopy correspond to the 3 buildings architecturally, and the height of the canopy has also a dialogue about the height of the columns of the stoa, but in a different design, of course, that looks more like this. And this is kind of like how the canopy have this relationship with the openness as we call it, of Aristotle Square. This is what we wanted Aristotle to be an open space. And what we do, and which is one of the most important parts of Aristotle's design for us, is that we are introducing an element, the element of water, a system, a water evaporating system that actually transforms the square according to the time of the day, of the month, or the year. So it introduces the element of time as well. So what we're introducing here is the water evaporating system that while it's on, the square is transformed into a playful area for children to play, and it's also changing the microclimate on a very hot day. When the system stops, but the stone on the surface of the square is wet, it makes it reflective. So it becomes a mirror, metaphorically, because it mirrors the buildings of Ernest De Bruyne, and it creates a beautiful event at the moment, and then it dries out again. So this kind of circle of water brings the circle of time into our proposal, but we believe this transformation and metamorphosis are a very important aspect of how we want the public space to function. We also have our elements. This is the elements that actually, the rhythm that we repeat those elements is how the space and the axis and the square are created. We have urban equipment, seating equipment, we have water, different typologies of water, and we have also our plants and trees that we propose. These are some views from the coverts to us to the axis, different days and times of the day maybe, or different parts of the axis. Here we can see the Manoliuchi Room, or here we see some part of the ephemeral market on the middle of the axis happening as well. And some night views of the proposal. The top is a night view of the axis, where some of these memory threads are materialized with light fixtures on the floor, and the coverts to us are full of light. And during the film festival of Thessaloniki, maybe with some more colorful lights. And last but not least, how we imagine a night view of Aristotle to be in the future, hopefully. I'm gonna actually share also a video with you if I'm not running out of time. I'm actually gonna borrow some time from Stella because she was so fast, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Go on, Evita.
Okay, tell me that it's okay with you.
The video was a very difficult precondition of this competition. It's not very usual to ask for a video of the city with your proposal, especially when we didn't have the buildings of the city. So we had to design all the buildings of the city area by research from the Ernest De Bruyne designs, but also from Google Maps. We start from the north, of course, from Egnatia, as you have seen before. So the idea is that the video always shows part from the bird's eye view and then goes down to the eye view,
describing parts of the axis according to the rooms we described. And that's the ephemeral market. It's in one of the typologies that could actually be. There are the sitting nooks, and we're introducing some beaten earth, like soil in certain areas. We actually see how like this wide esplanade in the middle is functioning with all these parallel zones we described, and how you can actually see the sea from any part of the proposal. A different kind of trees are introduced in different parts of the axis according to certain moments that happen in the city in certain areas. That's a better view for the clock that we redesigned to be a sculpture that people can sit around with this rotating sculptural garden that is also working as a metamorphosis of the public space. And then we have the threshold, always using the elements of water, trying to bring the water more into the city. And the open Aristotle Square, canopies. And that's the steps towards the sea. And thank you so much for having us and for listening to us.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Ariadne and Evita. It was a great project, great analysis, but also such an inspiring synthesis. I mean, it was great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next presenter. We are going to go bigger. The next project is Urban Bridge and will be presented by Agapi Proimou. A few words about Agapi. She studied architecture at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and received the MSc AAD in 2002 at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation at Columbia University. She has studied also architecture at the École Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture de Paris-la-Villette and landscape architecture at the CAA Barcelona School of Architecture through the Erasmus and Leonardo da Vinci program, respectively. She was a founding partner of Room for Thought, and in 2013 she founded her own architecture office in Athens. She has received distinctions for her architectural work and has taught at the Department of Products and Systems Design Engineering at the Aegean University, at the School of Architecture at the Technical University of Crete, and at the Department of Architecture, University of Patras, where she became an assistant professor in 2019. Agapi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation, Electra and Anna. And also, I'm very happy to participate in this event. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see now the presentation? Okay. So yes, I'm going bigger. So I'm going to present you this project that we did with my colleagues, Alexandra Stratou and Lefteris Michaloutsous, and also with a team of architects that was Konstantinos Moustakis and two students of architecture, Lazaros Kolaxis from the University of Crete, from the Department of Architecture, and also Mariantina Papadea from the Department of Architecture in Patras. The project it was a public competition that it was organized by the administrative region of Western Greece in 2019, and the theme was the unification of significant points of interest and regeneration of the area around the Archaeological Museum of Patras. We received the second prize for this project. The project is mainly a reflection on the pressures forming the cities in the Greek region today and the pressures transforming their surroundings as well. The competition site is found in the suburban area of the city of Patras, which is the third largest city in Greece, and it is located on both sides of the highway that connects Patras to Athens. The surface area of the site is 165 acres, so it's a very big scale. It's a scale of the project is between a landscape project and an urban design one. And as you can see from the photos, there is like the highway that it is crossing the site, the big new building of the Archaeological Museum of Patras, On the right here is the Department of Plant Protection. There are a lot of institutions around. This is a garden of the old. This is the garden of the old agricultural school in Patras, and this is the ruin of the agricultural school. And it is an area that it is very dispersed. It is a fragmented space with crops and dispersed green spaces between significant public and historical building, archaeological findings. There is also the findings of the Roman bridge there at the beginning of the site. There are a lot of major altitude difference also on the whole site. So in order to realize and to understand such a big area, we started doing the mapping. So I'm going to present these diagrams. Maybe you'll understand more what's happening. So first diagram is they are the buildings that we are about to preserve. And here is like the big scale is the Archaeological Museum of Patras. And they are completely isolated between them, and they are not connected because, as you saw in the pictures before, in between them, there are like empty spaces that they are inaccessible, actually. The figure-ground relation shows a lot what is happening in the areas that the city is expanding without plan. And the city is expanding on both sides of the highway. Initially, the larger extent and in a larger density is expanding between the coastline and the highway, but also it continues, and then it expands in between the highway and the mountain, the Panahaki mountain. The unplanned development of the suburbs creates a fragmented empty space, as we can see in this diagram, between the built environment. These empty spaces remain inactive and disconnected, and they don't have any cohesion of public space. The national highway that connects Athens to Patras is the main road of large scale and importance that crosses the site. It divides it into two neighborhoods, the neighborhoods of Patloupoli and the neighborhood of Panahaki and Glyfada. Although the city suburbs have developed longitudinally on either side of it, the highway has not changed. It remains a relatively high-speed road with few crossings and traffic lights. So people actually cannot walk around this road. The planting in the area, you can find low vegetation that it's mostly for recreation around the museum. And then the other thing that you can find, there are like olive and orange groves, and also the garden here of the agricultural school, which is like a great experience to walk around, and it's a very nice place and a very nice space. In the site area, there are a lot of altitude differences. So here you have like the garden of the agricultural school. It is on the higher level. And here, where is the institution, the Department of Plant Protection, it is the lower altitude, and it is even lower than the highway and also the museum. So our idea and our main concern was our proposal aims to the elimination of boundaries and the establishment of connections between the points of interest. The cities of the Greek region, in contrast to the urban character of the capital city, they tend to accentuate the relationship with nature, the connection with the local tradition, and the human scale of their environment. But this is a quality of life that refers mainly to the past. The growing economic and administrative independence of the regions and their economic development redefine the role of smaller cities as new urban centers with a hyper-local character. Their power is growing, and they need to take on their future urban role as administrative and cultural centers, it is more important than ever. So in this, actually, in this idea, in this vision, we envisioned a new urban center that it is completely unrelated to the core, to the urban core of the city, which is like a next urban center with different features and different characteristics. And it is formed by these gestures, these architectural gestures that we are creating like a surface, a gridded surface on the second image, that it is connecting the institutions and also the buildings. And it's a very distinct public space that we are creating there. So we are introducing this gesture of this surface that it is connecting the Department of Plant Protection to the museum and also to the agricultural school and the garden and back to the olive grove, as we call it. And also we are introducing a lot of programs in the empty spaces, designing the landscape in order to create a new center, And the idea is like that this is a nodal point, and then it's going to be a region network that will be another nodal point that will be created in the city. We're going to have a lot of centers and not just the historic center of the city. So this is like the model that we produced just to understand the space. And I'm going to explain now just the mode of operation of the architectural idea. So the first thing that we did is that we, part of the highway is undergrounded, and a new traffic node is being constructed at the connection of the highway with the site to connect the Archaeological Museum, the Department of Plant Protection, the city of Patras, the neighboring regional cities, and finally Athens. So it's on the basement, underground, there is a traffic junction that connects to a very big parking space. And then you can actually, so we are first of all solving the infrastructure of the site. And we are making all the connections. So you can park your car there, and then you can, with a very vertical circulation, you can just go up and find yourself on the urban space of the public square. So this is like the first gesture, the first movement. And then the second one is like creating this very clear urban bridge, we are calling it, which is like a gridded surface that it is divided into 4 distinct areas. The first area is here, that we are extending the olive grove that we found there. And we are creating an arena, like a big clearing, like an open space for large concerts or other events. Then the urban bridge, the surface, it is going inside it is created a new entrance to the garden of the old agricultural school. And we want to just make it easier to visit the garden and just feel the whole atmosphere. And then it becomes a big public square for the building of the museum. At the end, you can find the open market, the agora, we are calling it, and also the connection, the way that we are going down here, or there is a greenhouse, that it is the research center for the Department of Plant Protection. They already have a greenhouse, and we are just redesigning it. Also, we are establishing 4 very clear entrances from the 4 points, like from the where you can approach the area and the park. Here is like you have a west entrance from an existing public square. Here is the east entrance, and this is the school area. On top, you have the entrance from the canopy of that you will see later, that it is protecting and sheltering the findings, archaeological findings of the Roman bridge. And here is the south entrance. It's connecting, it is a pedestrian bridge, and it is connected more to the city. So in this way, you can actually get yourself up in the park and just find a way to walk around and realize the new conditions of the space. Also, there is like a zone here. We are calling it a mile topography zone because we wanted to find a way to isolate this space, this landscape, from the noise and from all the hustle that the highway is creating. So in this axonometric drawing, like zooming in the axonometric drawing, you can see you can all see the pedestrian bridge that is leading up to the public square. You can see this the highway that is going under the surface. And here you can see clearly the public square of the museum with some trees and some water elements. On your left, there is like the connection with the ramp to the level of the Department of Plant Protection. So the two institutions, the Department of Plant Protection and the museum, they can actually cooperate. That was the idea. And they can form together a research center in the area. On your right, you can see also some sports facilities that they are going from the side that the school area is already located there. And on the back of the image here, you can find also the concept, the olive grove, the space where we imagine that a lot of big scale events will be hosted. And also here, it is the garden of the old agricultural school. So here is a section, a perspective section of how the highway is undergrounded and how all the circulation it is arranged in that way in order not to be more organized as an infrastructure. And here is the space, is like the canopy for the open market, and also the exodus from the parking space to the public park on top. Here is this is an image, a zoom in on the axonometric of the soft materiality zone, like the mile topography, we're calling it. And at the beginning, at the north entrance of the site, it is a canopy that it is used to shelter the Roman bridge, the findings. And also the shape of it and the way it is designed is creating an entrance to the zone and to the park. And also here you can find you'll find another historical building, Villa Fegu, that it is used for lectures and for various presentations from the University of Patras. And afterwards, here is Milichos River, and afterwards there is like a skate park and playground, and then we're going to the urban center of the bridge. This is an image of how we are envisioning a little bit the canopy that will shelter the Roman bridge, and also that will create the northern entrance of the site. And here is a section, perspective section also from the mile topography zone, with the playground, the skate park, and an open air cinema that it is designed in the banks of the Milichos River. Here is like a section in the arena, in the concert space, in the olive grove that we're calling it. And you can see that from that part, okay, the view is like that, but you can see also the public square of the museum and also the greenhouse of the Department of Plant Protection. Also, the concern was to to find a way to unite the two different neighborhoods that they are created, like on the west side and on the east side of the highway, like the neighborhood of Anthopoli to the neighborhood of Kourlifada Panahaki. And this was organized with a ramp that is beginning from the west side and from the new pub we are proposing here for a new library. And so here is the plant, the department for the plant protection, the greenhouse, and also botanical garden, and all the crops that the department is cultivating. And the slope begins here, and it reaches like through the urban bridge, the other side of the highway, which is like the other neighborhood. So the two neighborhoods are connected, and they can actually find the space and the public space organized in the middle of their connection. So our interest in this area is like, it was a lot of what is happening in such a complex case as this one, that you have like such a big area, such a large site, and you have like so many different situations happening in this site. So it's not organized at all. And you need like to find solutions like to overcome all the obstacles of the communication of the site. And what we ended up saying is that the transfer of a public building or of a public institution like the Archaeological Museum of Patras in a suburban area of Patras, because of the size and because of the new needs and functions of such an institution, creates another kind of opportunity for this suburban area to create a different kind of center, which has a different quality and a different thinking about the urban space. So we thought that such a big institution, in order to function and entail and address the public life, needs to have a very important public space. So that was the idea of the public square and the urban bridge. And so in order to interact with the city and the neighborhood, also at the same time, the Department of Plant Protection of Patras, it has expanded its responsibilities, so the new greenhouse, the research laboratory, the new public library, and all the infrastructure of the park contribute to this new role as an extroverted research center. Because if you see it now, you will not realize that it is actually there. Nobody knows actually, but that it is there. So the idea was to create a new cultural and a new common place of action and development of institutions, of research, of activity, of sports, play, and recreation. And that was the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Agapi, for presenting us this very complex project. Must have been a big challenge to deal with all these different parameters. So after two interesting urban projects, a big one and an even bigger one, we're going to move back to a smaller scale again, to the scale of many of small residences. Actually, we're going to move to a very small scale because Parina Vasilopoulou is going to present us a former warehouse converted into 25 micro apartments. I'm going to share a few words about Parina's work. She's a founding partner and managing director at Pearspace, an architecture studio, and a founding partner and project coordinator at Pera, an education and community nonprofit. She's an architect based in Athens, and her work focuses on how design and policy may transform cities, social growth, education, and innovation. She has worked in Greece, Switzerland, and the United States, where she has been involved in various projects ranging from exhibition design to large residential buildings, and has extensive experience in project management. Parina has also led international workshops for professionals focusing on community engagement and learning. She graduated from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and holds a master's in advanced architectural design from Columbia University in New York, where she was also a Fulbright scholar. So Parina, we're ready to listen about a new typology in Athens.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction, Electra. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for this very honoring invitation. And thank you for the fellow panelists. I knew the works, but honestly, it was a rare insight and it was great to see. And if I may say, in terms of diversity, because it's quite a diverse body of work from everyone we've seen so far, and we're about to see another diverse result. And if I may say, I mean, it's not by chance, really. I mean, we're all graduates from one school. New York is about diversity, and I feel that DISA was a lot about diversity as well. Like in my mind, this diverse body of work that we see today is the result of that, really. Now, let's, without further ado, first of all, thank you everyone for still being around, because I know we're a bit late, but I will be quick. Let me just, what happened to the share button? Somehow it disappeared. Screen sharing, perfect. Okay, so, can you all see my screen?
Not really.
Not yet.
Okay. Why is that so? Let me just, sorry for that. How about now?
Yes, now we can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. So as the lecturer just said, my business partner and I have a firm, two firms
See
actually.
your screen.
Thank you for that. All right, so it's both, and we see them both as platforms, really. Para, which is a non-profit, and Bearspace, which is our architectural firm. But in order to discuss ELU, which is the project that I'm going to mainly speak about today, it is almost inevitable not to speak about Para itself. So, and more specifically about the recent project of ours, the Neighborhood Room, because it all comes down to the same design goals, really, that we have in all our works, but to this specific two ones mostly. A lot of them actually go back to the New York days and our studying days. So our goals have to do with global challenges. We are very interested in, the way that community breakdown manifests itself in contemporary cities, Greek cities, as well as international cities. And we are very interested in dealing with climate change or climate crisis, really, by now. So we are interested in strengthening the existing communities and form stronger new communities, and try our best in terms of design to deal with, as discussed, climate change. Now, so it sounds like micro housing, which is indeed like a very small scale, especially in regards to the works we just saw. So in our mind, it's actually, we're very interested in scale, but in a very different way. So instead of a concentrated effort, we're trying to have a large scale effect. So basically try to achieve the most impact possible, but by really creating smaller units. And that's what I'm about to get to. So we're interested in these two works in both all disused public buildings and private buildings. And we're also interested to deal with the fact that there is lack of space for community forming and community creativity. So we're going for adaptive reviews and efficient use of building space. So we're trying to really exploit every inch of a building and make space for community to thrive, and trying to build efficiency and accessibility upgrade to the buildings. So without further ado, I'm going to, these are some information about the project in Thessaloniki. We had created 3 community maker centers there, and I will discuss the connection with Elu right afterwards, in 3 different neighborhoods, very different neighborhoods, as a matter of fact. And they were practically maker spaces. We have done more than 800 workshops and activities in those spaces, and we have a bit more than 13,000 active members and visitors so far. The most interesting part is that a community has grown there. Right now, well, as of September, more than 80% of the workshops were organized by community members, and the vast majority believe that this is a vital space for their neighborhood. Now, the reason why I'm showing this is that accessibility and design and trying to achieve impact through a system takes me to ELU. So ELU is a project that had a target audience of students, young professionals and couples, traveling professionals, and retirees. And this was the beginning of it all, was back in 2018. I don't know who were back in Greece back then. It was a weird time, really. We were a few years into very deep crisis. There was a huge available building stock around the city, and that needed an upgrade. So one of our first projects that we were commissioned was to basically the business plan called for micro housing, micro meaning between 17 and 25 square meters. And there were all these different buildings in different spots in the city center, mainly very different floor plans that yielded very different layouts. So we had to find a way to kind of organize all of this building stock and upgrade it. So we tried to break down the pieces, and every home needs, a kitchen, of course, to cook, a bathroom to restore, and a bed to sleep. These are the three primary functions, and everything else can be around the space. Let's put it this way. I mean, this is the most customized experience. So we tried to optimize the essential modules of what this meant. So a bed module, a bathroom module, and a kitchen module. We researched over 1,000 examples of micro housing globally, a lot of them in New York as well, as you probably can understand. And that's how the ELU, so the essential living unit system, was created. So the modules were essentially placed and can be placed in many different ways. I think of it as an assembly of pieces. And in that sense, the type of floor plan doesn't really matter. So the vessel itself doesn't really matter, because you have all your basic functions there, and you have everything you need in the apartment already, and it's the same unit across. So today's project, which I'm going to discuss about, is Safous. This was the very first one. It's in Kalithea, Greece. So it's probably the only one outside the city center. And we started from there because this was a demo, really, it was more to test the concept. And so you get to have the ELU unit, so the compact unit of bed, kitchen, and bathroom here, and then have the rest of space to be customized by the user. So this is more apparent here as well as here. This one was actually 17 square meters apartment, which was very tricky in the beginning, but then this is it. Actually, we have a picture of it here. You can see some pictures from the interiors of the spaces. And these are some of the buildings that the first version was applied. Of course, we continue the research and development of the unit as we go to more and more buildings. So this is a living organism on its own. And there is various versions of it, you know, to a certain degree, this is getting customized in terms of you know, the building and the needs. So the clients can also customize it. So the people that live there. And here you can see some of the examples. And this is a more super compact alu, which we're using to buildings with taller ceiling height. You can see some examples here. And we get to reach to the community part that I discussed in the beginning, which is a big part in our projects in all of these buildings. The common spaces, so what we call the community spaces there, try to take, you know, to exploit every possible spot on the building. And we're talking about disused backyards, for instance, or rooftops. This is actually quite a hit. I mean, in most of these buildings, people love them. They go do screenings there. They listen to music. They have parties. Well, through COVID, it was a place to actually socialize. So they spend time inside the apartment, and then they would go upstairs to socialize within their own building. So lockdown was a bit more bearable. This is the closing slide, and what I'm basically trying to say here is we're all trying to increase the impact of our designs in community, and this was an effort from ours, and I would like to thank you at this point. Let me.
Thank you so much, Parina. The presentation was great, and it was a fun fact that you went from the really big scale and big ideas to the micro scale of everyday living. Perfect combination. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments for any one of the five presenters, I'm sorry. Okay, I have a question. If I'm allowed, I don't know if Electra wants to. Have renewed connections, have embodied ideas, new realities, but the